Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Paul Young Podcast. Everybody has these stories. I mean, we could start with the A's anywhere in the world, pick anybody at random, and find stories. Stories about faith, about loss, about grief, about hope, about trauma and tragedy, about joy and wonder, and the unexpected twists and turns of life. I love talking to people about those kinds of things. The next two episodes are a recent conversation that I had with my friend Tony Woodall. I think you're going to love them. So let's go.
You're listening to the Paul Young Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Paul Young Podcast. And I've got a really special friend, Tony. Tony Woodall, married to Kara. And they have a house on the outside of Nashville, but they also have a place in a little, well, how would you describe it? A little village?
Yeah, it is a little historic Victorian village.
And that almost nobody has ever heard of.
Yes, it's called Rugby, not named after the sport, named after a small school in Oxfordshire, England. And someone who attended school there, his name was Thomas Hughes. He had a dream to create a place and work and for second sons of England. So, as you know, unless you were not firstborn, you were not included in the inheritance. So second sons usually did not know a trade, had never worked, and could have lived there wherever the castle was their entire life. But many of them wanted to have a place of their own, wanted to make their own money. So that's what he built this for. And so they came over on the Cumberland Plateau in East Tennessee and Eastern Kentucky, but this particular little village is in East Tennessee, and it backs up to the Big South Fork National Park here. So there are lots of neat things to do, great hiking trails, great rivers, a lot of wildlife. And the little village here is about 80 of us, different ages. We've got folks in their 80s, like a normal community, but instead of everybody living in subdivisions with people their age, we're all lumped in together. So you really are learning.
Weren't you mayor there for a while?
Mayor. We are. The village is a nonprofit. It's on the National Historic Registry. It is like an unincorporated community. So we don't have a mayor and we don't have a city council. So what we have for the nonprofit that takes care of the original buildings that are here that are not privately owned, like we live in one of the original houses built in 1880, but it's privately owned by us, so we're responsible to take care of it. But we've got quite a few properties here that the nonprofit owns, and they don't have private owners to take care of them. So we raise money and apply for grants to take care of those houses and buildings that are on the National Historic Registry. So yeah, it's a neat cause.
Yeah, it's got a church, right? A church building.
It does. And it's original. It's 1880, and it's a little Episcopal church, as you might imagine, folks coming over from England. It's interesting. There are only about 25, 30 folks that are there on a Sunday morning. Now, it's like the Baptist on Easter now. We'll turn out, and it'll be a packed house on Easter. But it's neat. It's a neat little place.
And you've got a general store and a little restaurant.
Yeah, a little restaurant is here in Rugby. Now, the general store, when the community was first founded, it was a co-op because the second sons that came over, they also had never worked a day in their life. So they didn't have any skills. They didn't know what to do. So they ran into the folks who were living here already. And it was a mix of Appalachian folks who were Scots and Irish and freed and runaway slaves. There's some neat stories there. Rugby was very anti-slavery, and so there was an African-American lady here who owned her own business, which was against the law, and employed 21 white people, which was against the law. And
wow.
So it's a neat little conglomeration. So the general store down the road is from Appalachian roots. And so, but it is without a doubt the gathering place in Rugby. For Saturday morning breakfast. And,
yeah. Isn't it also true that if it hadn't been for some of the Amish people, those second-born sons would have not made it?
They'd have starved to death. Yeah. There were and still are quite a few Amish communities around. As a matter of fact, we buy most of our vegetables from them. They're amazing families. But yeah, as a matter of fact, there are lots of, anytime something's old, there's a lot of folklore and a lot of stories. But part of the stories is if some Native American folks hadn't have told them they need to quit going to the bathroom upstream from their drinking water, they'd all be dead. So,
Yeah, I can believe that.
and there are great pictures of them sitting on front porches here with full suits on the middle of summer and fluffy, sleeves sticking out of their jackets. They looked great, but, they were, bless their hearts, they didn't know how to do anything.
Wow. It's a place that Tony and Kara have invited me to twice to be a speaker.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And we kind of filled up that little Episcopal place, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, people know the shack. They know the movie if they haven't read the book. But most of the folks around here are more readers than they are movie watchers. And so it's a quiet place. And so it's very contemplative. They loved it. I mean, they were just, we packed that little auditorium out twice.
Yeah. And it's the first time I've ever done Irish road bowling.
Oh, how special was that, too, on your team?
My God. On my team, I don't know, did they do it by lots or did they just pull names out of a hat? Or
No, Arita is in charge of road bowling, and she will come out and say, okay, I need 5. She'll count, and she wants 4 on each team. She'll say, okay, I need 5 captains. So like people are going to volunteer. And just when somebody's about to say, I will, she goes, okay, you, and you. Y'all are captains. Start picking in that order. And they just pick, like picking backyard football.
Yeah.
And
before we tell them about my team, tell them what Irish road bowling is, because there's really only one road through Rugby. And all the houses are on these little sort of, one-laner trail roads.
Yeah, they are. You have to pull over to let somebody through on almost all of them, except for the main road that goes through Rugby. So obviously it is, if you look on Instagram and just search for Irish road bowling, you'll see they play it in Ireland. That's where it came from. They play it in West Virginia, a lot of Appalachian communities. North Carolina's got a group. West Virginia's got a group. And so you'll see that spread. So it's real simple. Each team has a cannonball, a literal small round cannonball.
It's not even very round.
Yeah, it's kind of bumpy and the road's bumpy, so even you can point in any direction you want to, but there's no guarantee the ball's going to go in that direction. Uh-huh. And you roll it like you're bowling, but each team goes in an order. Team 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. One person will roll from team 1, and then one person will roll from team 2. So each team has an order that they roll in as well. The cannonballs are all a different color. And so your team, we start down the road and you walk along watching everybody roll. And even though it's slightly competitive, it's probably, 7.5% competitive, and whatever the rest of it is, 90-something% have fun. And like the Irish, there are probably some traveling libation cups. And so a lot of fun. We just played 2 nights ago.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And now people come in outside the village because they've seen it on social media. And we play whoever goes down and around the sidewalk and back onto the road. And we play for about a mile. And so whatever team goes down and back in the least rolls, they win. So we play it like golf. You keep score like golf. And at the end, you get your picture made with the trophy. And the trophy is all black with smut because when the restaurant burned down, the trophy burned down there with it. And so after the fire quit, we went in and got our trophy, and we still use it today.
Yeah, that's great. Now, for folks, as you're listening to this, imagine it's even a highway that runs right through Rugby, yeah?
Yeah, it is a small, it's a 2-lane, what was a state highway, 52. And then in the early 2000s, the folks who were leading the nonprofit then went to the state and said, look, we try to have our festivals and we'll have, a couple thousand people walking around the village, crossing the street, children everywhere. And then here come these 18-wheelers full of chickens, and feathers are flying everywhere and people are trying to find their kids. Y'all build us a bypass around Rugby. So they finally did. Well, that cut down on a lot of traffic. And so we don't get the traffic from onlookers who would have accidentally came by. But, with social media now, people know more and more about Rugby. So we still have a lot of visitors that come through. But we're not the main highway now.
But you're
It's a
still,
lot.
I mean, you're playing rugby, and all of a sudden everybody vacates the middle of the
Oh,
road
yes.
because you're throwing the cannonball right down the center of the road as far as you can get it. And what happens is when it rolls off the road, that's the mark for your next person to bowl
That's
from.
right.
So
That's right.
it's like half a mile distance down, half a mile back up.
Right.
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 And so,
So
yeah.
when a car comes through, first person that sees it yells car, and then everybody yells car. So we all get off the road. The car comes through slowly. It does not know what to do. Usually, if they've never been here before, they're just like amazed, and everybody's waving at them, and they wave back, and they get on by, and then we just keep going.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. So the first time I played, I got assigned, right? I got assigned to a team.
Mm-hmm.
Of the four of us, the one guy that was assigned to the same team as me is blind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was our first fully blind person we'd ever had come play rowboat.
Yep. And so you had to position him and kind of tell him, all right, it's straight ahead of you, straight shot, whatever. Give it your best.
And he did.
He did. He did. He did great. Did better than some of the others, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he didn't put as much thought into it as the rest of us did. He just backed up. They said, just take a couple steps forward and let it rip. And
Yep.
I mean, his would just go far down the road. Everybody would clap, and it was good because you and he had a nice conversation there and got to know one another.
Yep, we did. Good guy. So on the way back, when you get to the end, if you're tied, I mean, you're close to tied. There's like two teams, which happened in our case. We were right there. It's whoever rolls the cannonball past the end line the furthest before it comes off the road. That's who wins. And,
yes.
And I can't remember if he was the last bowler. I think he was. And so here we are in a tie, and our last bowler is blind. So we set him up, and we won. And so
he let it rip.
He did. So historically, we're not only, first time for me, but also the first time for him, and the first time that road bowling has been won by a team that had a blind guy on it.
That's right. That's exactly right. A lot of history there.
Oh, no
Which
kidding.
fits rugby well,
It does fit rugby well. You've been up there living part-time off and on for how long now?
I think it's been 8 years.
Wow.
I came up with Kara.
Yep.
Before we got married. We dated a year before we got married. And during that year, she said to me one time, she said, hey, listen, I am going up to this little village in East Tennessee called Rugby for the weekend to stay with my friends, Howie and Jody from Knoxville. And they have a house up there. You want to go? And I said, well, yeah. I'd never heard of rugby. I didn't know anything about it. I was chasing this good-looking blonde. And so,
and she is, by the way, she is.
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
I got a picture of her road bowling, and she is off the ground.
You made that picture, didn't you?
I did.
Both feet. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes when she makes a good roll, she'll get a running start and turn a cartwheel right in the middle of an asphalt street. I mean, and people just start clapping. Anyway.
That's a big deal in rugby.
Yeah, it is. And rugby has a little spooky, anything that old, all the historic places have some spookiness to them. So she said, now, listen, they say that this house we're staying at is not haunted, but it can be a little spooky. And I said, well, that's all right. I don't believe in that stuff anyway. But our room was upstairs, the top of the stairs up there. And upstairs is a long hallway. And down at the other end of the hallway is the bathroom. And so, of course, I'm a little bit older, so, it's 2 a.m. and I got to go. And so I'm very quiet. Get out of the bed and I go out the door. It's pitch dark up there, not a light at all. And I'm trying to feel my way down the wall and remember, which door is the bathroom. And I get about halfway down that hall. And then all of a sudden, I feel the presence of these hands come down on the back of my shoulders. And I mean, I froze. And this voice spoke to me and said, if you think you're leaving me in that room by myself, you are crazy. And it was Karen. I thought I was going to die. And she, she said, I'm not, you're not leaving me in that spooky room. Oh my gosh.
Oh my
But
gosh, true.
I got bit. I got bit by the rugby bug that weekend. There's no doubt about it. And I'm up here as much as I can. And sometimes we're up here at the same time. Sometimes she comes up. She might bring a girlfriend or something with her, or a couple of them. And then sometimes I might come up by myself. And I've got buddies here that I hang out with too. And so it is. But most of the time we're up here together.
And you're doing
And so,
construction kind of stuff.
yeah, I'm flipping houses and I enjoy it. And I really am enjoying getting started up here. We live in the poorest county in the state of Tennessee. And so I like the idea of providing some good, affordable housing to some people who are kind of locked out.
And you're talking about
Out.
Murfreesboro, yeah?
No, I'm talking about up in Rugby.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Not in the little village, but outside the village. This is the poorest county in the state.
Got it.
And so, yeah. So, yeah, I'm enjoying that. And
good for you.
I might flip 4 or 5 a year. So.
Yeah. So I remember sitting around the campfire outside your house in Murfreesboro. You started telling stories, but what I want is, would you kind of give a big view of your life, kind of where you started, what happened, what you did, what transpired, and how you ended up.
Somebody who's going to edit this, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, my son Nicholas, he's the editor, and he's listening to this right now. So,
oh, have mercy, Nicholas, have mercy.
Yeah, and he will be. He will. He's good about stuff like that. He helps me all the time.
Yeah, I'll try to do this as quickly as I can. So, I grew up in a small town in North Alabama. I'm an old Southern boy that grew up with Roll Tide and Bear Bryant and George Wallace and all kinds of racial tension. And I was born in 60. I think my either first or second grade was the first year that white and black children went to school together. It was an interesting season growing up in Decatur. My dad had been this unbelievable athlete who, as a senior in high school, was the most valuable basketball player in high school in the state of Alabama. And they won the state championship. And he signed to play college basketball. And my mother was the oldest of 11 in Athens, Alabama. They were cotton farmers, sharecroppers. She just turned 86. She's there, 5 of them still living, and it's her and the youngest 4. So I had a great family life, a younger brother who was an amazing athlete himself. And I got lucky and turned out to be 6'8". So I wound up getting to go to college. I'd have been able to go to college, was on an athletic scholarship. So I went to I grew up in a little church. We were called Churches of Christ. We were a cappella singers. And so I wound up going to play basketball at a 4-year school. That was a Christian school from that vein. And out of that then became a minister for 25 years. That was my full-time work. Started out as a youth pastor, and we didn't use the pastor word because the Baptists did. So we were ministers. And so I was a youth minister for quite a few years and did well at that and enjoyed it, and then had an opportunity to pastor a church for the first time. And during that time, I was kind of, for the first time, getting introduced to some things outside my box. The whole Christian music thing was happening in Nashville, and that's where I lived. And a lot of the Church of Christ young people who became like Amy Grant, and a lot of those folks, that it kind of branded into something more than just normal Church of Christ. And Holy Spirit was talked about a lot more. There was a church down on Music Row called Belmont Church that I wound up pastoring one of their churches. And so I had been doing that for about 20 years. Looking back on it now, I mean, I'll be 65 in November. So I'm to a point where I can be honest with myself and not really sure I care if it bothers anybody else, but realize now that I wasn't really taking good care of my family, my marriage, and loved my kids. But thank God they were old enough to be in the youth group. And even before that, I drug them around to everything. They probably wouldn't have seen me a lot. We wound up going through divorce. Wasn't something that happened to us. It was choices we made. That was tough, difficult on the kids for sure. Spent the next 20 years working in different types of work, primarily doing consulting work, corporate consulting work. For a while, had a sporting goods store that I started from scratch and owned. And So for about 20 more years, I just kind of spent a lot of time getting to know the folks who were not in church on Sunday. They were usually in great bars all over town, and they were amazing people. I just didn't know that they were good people outside of church. It was the good season as well. And then there was this little Church of Christ right down the street from where I was living. One Sunday morning, I stopped in there, and they were really neat. I started hanging out there, and after I'd been there about a year, they said, look, our guys wanting to do mission work. Would you step in? And I said, look, I hadn't done this in a long time. And they said, it's all right. I mean, we don't have high expectations. And I said, I haven't done this in a lot of years. And they said, we know. We know who you were back then. We know. And we wouldn't be asking you if we didn't think we were supposed to. So I remember that first Sunday I stood up, and when I turned around and looked at the 75 people who were sitting out there, I thought I was going to throw up. I was so scared, so afraid. I didn't even know why I was afraid, but I was. And it turned out that I wasn't there for them. I mean, they were there for me. I went through a lot of healing those 5 years. But I finally told them, look, I don't think y'all were looking real hard, and I'm going to need you to start looking hard. I don't want to get back into long-term work just in a church again. And they said, well, we understand. Well, we think that's fine. I won't ever forget during that time I was there, I had met a real estate agent named Sherry Moore. It was during the 4th year. My last year there was just starting my 5th year. And the way that I met her was I was looking online. Someone handed me a book called Extra Virgin Grace, a little paperback. And it was by a guy out of a South African guy, Ryan. I can't remember his last name, but I was just amazed by that book. And I looked him up online, and on his website, he had something called the Mirror Bible, and by some South African guy also. And I'd never heard of that guy or the Mirror Bible. But I ordered for free this thing of the first 4 chapters of John. It's just a small little thing. I got it online. I was reading it, and I was like, what in the world? It was just like bombs were going off. And all of a sudden online, there was this lady who had put an ad on Facebook that she had this guy named Francois Dutoy, who was coming from South Africa and going to be at her real estate office, that she owned that real estate office in Shelbyville, which is outside of Murfreesboro where I was, little bitty Poto town. And I was like, what in the world? So I called her. I didn't know her. And I said, is this the guy who wrote the Mirror Bible? And she said, yes. And I said, what's he doing coming to Shelbyville? I don't even go to Shelbyville. I don't even like Shelbyville. She just laughed, and she and I became friends. And I went to hear him speak that night, and I won't ever forget. He's so happy. I mean, you're good friends with Francois.
Yep.
He's so happy and, just full of life. And I thought, he is way too happy. He has owned something. I mean, there's something going on with this guy. I was sitting there trying to figure out what he was doing there. I won't ever forget, I think he was in Luke 15, maybe. Is that where the 3 parables are?
Yep.
Lost sons?
Yeah.
Yeah, he told a parable about there was a shepherd who had 100 sheep, and one of them left. And he left the 99 and went and looked until he found the one. And then there was a lady who lost a coin. She looked and searched for it until she found it. And then there was a father who had 2 sons, and one of them ran away. And every day he'd basically go out to the road and look for him, wait for him, because he saw him the day he came home. And then he asked this question. He said, I wonder why the shepherd left the 99 and went to find the one. And I wonder why the woman did not stop searching until she found the coin. And I wonder why the father went out to the road every day and looked down it to see if his son was coming home. And I was just sitting there listening. He said, well, it's pretty simple. It's because they belong to them. And the only thing that can be lost is something that belongs. And Paul, when he said that, everything flipped in my brain, because everything I'd ever believed and taught, you start lost and you get found. When he said that, everything flipped. No, you start belonging. And then if you get lost, who you belong to comes and finds you. there is no doubt that was the most, from a spiritual standpoint, and even now, just from a life standpoint, because now I don't have a spiritual life and everything else. It just is a life. That is the most profound moment I've ever had in that way, from someone who's speaking or teaching. After about 3 or 4 months of preaching on Sunday morning at that little church, the shepherd said, something has obviously happened to you, and we like it, but we're not sure we're ready for you to tell it to everybody yet. We need for you to share it with us first, because it is totally and completely different from anything that we've ever been taught. And we're not saying it's not right. We're just saying that we kind of take the responsibility of being shepherds here. And I got it. And I said, I think we probably do need for me not to teach for a while I go through this. And it was so peaceful, so good. But that kind of started it down a path of, I wound up at Millie's then with Sherry. Uh-huh. That's where I met you.
Yep.
It's where I met Julian. It's where I met Baxter. It was a wild ride after that. Of course, Millie's is just one little microcosm of all the places that you and Francois and Baxter and Rod have go to all over the country and some all over the world. But boy, was it an amazing experience for me. And so now I find myself turning 65 in November and looking at what's probably, somewhere around starting the fourth quarter of my life, and excited for the first time of starting one of these quarters.
Nice. I love that. And I really like how your community dealt with their own uncomfortableness, but yet didn't close the door.
Oh, no, they didn't at all. They're an amazing group. They thought, and I did too, when they said, there's 2 or 3 things we'd like for you to help us transition. We'd like to use instruments. That's huge in churches of Christ. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I said, okay. And they said, we'd like to see the sisters be able to take a more upfront role.
Wow.
Okay. And we'd like to experience Holy Spirit more.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And I said, can't do all that at one time. Let's just start slow, And there would be times when they said, we think you're going a little faster. I'd say, okay.
Let's start with a harmonica.
Yeah, that's what we did. It was Easter Sunday, and a couple of them were ready to, have the full band. And I said, let's don't do that. Let's do some a cappella songs, and let's maybe have a violin or an acoustic guitar, not hooked up to anything, because we were in a small building. And let's sing not new songs, but songs they know. Let's sing a hymn or 2 with that violin. And let's tell them up front what they're going to experience that day. And it's the sweetest thing. That was years ago. And now, even to this day, they do a cappella songs and they do songs with instruments.
I love that.
Yeah. It's really sweet. And that didn't seem like much to people who've grown up in, big boxes. But boy, those folks, for them, it's not as much about a guitar as it is about, are we going to love each other through it?
Yeah. Yeah. People who grew up a cappella singing, they're quite the singers. They really know. And where I grew up in Indonesia, they could do 8-part harmonies naturally.
Oh.
It was amazing. I was down at Gospel Union. I have a son and a daughter-in-law who go down there once a month and do the worship. So they asked me if I'd come and just speak. I tell you, those guys, they sing at the top of their lungs with all they got. And we're in every key that you can imagine. It's so great.
I'll tell you what, it is. I used to tell people when I would speak at a church that was not Church of Christ, and those folks have no experience in singing a cappella. And I said, look, you folks just need to find out when in the newspaper, just read the obituaries and find out when somebody from the Church of Christ has died, because you have not heard better singing than a good Church of Christ funeral.
Except at Amish.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is. It's the same thing.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
It's beautiful. And for me, one of the things that I grew up appreciating was simplicity. And I think sometimes we lose the simplicity of love. And, when we say the gospel, it's such a packed word.
Yep.
And packed with all kinds of different things depending on who packed it. But when you just talk about the simplicity of love, I mean, I can't imagine saying to my children when they can start understanding me, now I'm going to watch you for a while. And when you've proven to me how much you love me and that you believe that I'm your father, then I'll accept you as my child.
Yeah, craziness.
They'd lock me up for that.
Yeah, but we preach it.
But unfortunately, it has been what so many of us have lived on,
Yeah.
And so just try. Anyway, I didn't mean to get into all that.
Yep, it was good. It was so good.